My parents sat me down, looked me in the eye, and said, "Your sister's family comes first. You're always last." I smiled, said, "Good to know," and quietly rewrote my will to leave everything to a stranger for years. I was the invisible safety net, rewarded for being so strong and independent, which really just meant don't need anything from us. That dinner changed everything. My loyalty died, clean and irreversible. The usual requests for money and favors kept coming, but I started saying no. Their confusion turned to panic. When a failed business buried them in debt, they called me home, expecting me to be their obvious solution. Instead, I offered a loan with ironclad terms, forcing them to take responsibility. My dad said it felt like dealing with a bank. I replied, "When you needed love, I was family. When you needed money, I was infrastructure." Choosing yourself isn't revenge. It's the only way to stop bleeding for people who never noticed you were wounded.
My name is Mia, and for years, I was the invisible anchor in a family that orbited around my sister like she was the sun. She was the center of their universe, and I was just a quiet moon, reflecting her light and keeping things steady from a distance. Growing up in our unassuming Denver home, I had a front row seat to this family play. I watched love and attention flow to her in torrents. Her birthdays were elaborate, planned-out events. Family vacations were tailored to her every whim. Any crisis she had was met with an immediate, all-hands-on-deck rally. The whole family would stop and mobilize for her. Meanwhile, what I got felt like the drips from a leaky faucet. My birthdays were celebrated with store-bought cakes and a quick song. When I left for college, the goodbye was a hurried hug in the driveway. The most common thing I heard was, "You're so independent, Mia." At first, I thought it was a compliment. But over time, I realized it was code for don't ask for more. It wasn't outright neglect, not in the way you might think. It was a quiet, unspoken ranking system where I was perpetually last. I was praised for my strength, for my ability to handle things on my own. But that praise felt like an excuse for their indifference. It was like they were saying, "She's strong, so she doesn't need us." And for a long time, I believed them. I leaned into that role, becoming the reliable, low-maintenance daughter who never caused any trouble and never asked for anything. Then came the dinner. It wasn't a special occasion, just a regular family meal. But something shifted that night. My mother, in the most casual tone you can imagine, said something that made the whole illusion shatter. She was talking about their finances, about their plans for the future. And she said, "Well, we don't have to worry too much about Mia's future. She's always been our safety net." My father just nodded in agreement. My sister took a smug little sip of her wine, a tiny smirk on her face. It wasn't news. Deep down, I'd known this was how they saw me. I was their backup plan, their emergency fund, the responsible one they could always count on. But hearing it spoken aloud, so matter-of-factly, was like a slap in the face. It snapped my blind loyalty right in two. I didn't get angry. I didn't scream or cry. I just sat there, internalized it, and a switch flipped inside me. In that moment, I decided I was done. I started quietly dismantling the patterns that had drained me for my entire life. The change wasn't dramatic at first. It was subtle. The requests, of course, kept coming. My sister would text, asking me to babysit at the last minute. My dad would forward me an email about a bounced check. My mum would drop subtle hints about their financial woes. Before, I would have dropped everything. Now, things were different. I let the texts sit unanswered for hours, sometimes days. I moved my savings into private accounts that they couldn't see or ask about. And when the inevitable "Can you spot me a few hundred" came, my response was a simple, firm "I can't." There were no long apologies, no complicated explanations, just a simple boundary. The silence that followed was deafening. It was thick with confusion and unasked questions. Then, the probing started. "Are you okay, Mia?" they'd ask, their voices laced with concern. "You seem distant." It was amazing. My distance was the anomaly, not their years of entitlement. My quiet refusal to be their go-to solution was the problem, not their constant reliance on me. The real test, the final exam for my newfound spine, came a few months later. A business deal my dad had been working on went south, hard. They were buried in bills, facing a genuine financial crisis. They summoned me home for a family meeting. I walked into the living room, and the air was heavy with expectation. Their eyes were on me, pleading and expectant. They laid out the whole disaster, emphasizing how temporary it all was, with the unspoken assumption that I would step in and write a check to make it all go away. "You're stable, Mia," my dad said, his voice trying to sound reasonable. "You don't have kids or a mortgage. You can handle this." He said it as if my life, my savings, my future were just a spare resource for them to use. I took a deep breath. The old Mia would have caved. The old Mia would have felt guilty and responsible. But this was the new Mia. I looked at my dad, my mum, my sister, and I asked a simple question. What's the plan if I don't? The room froze. You could have heard a pin drop. Refusal was not in their script. They had never even considered the possibility that I would say no. They stared at me, dumbfounded. Instead of caving, I left the room and came back with a folder. I told them I wouldn't just be handing over a blank check. This wasn't going to be a handout. It was going to be a loan, a structured, formal loan. I had printed out the conditions. They had to sell certain assets, including my sister's second car. They had to start tracking every single expense in a shared spreadsheet. There would be no new debts without my approval and proof of why it was necessary. And the final, most important condition, mandatory family therapy for all of us. My dad's face turned red. This is cold, Mia, he protested. This is like dealing with a bank. Exactly, I replied, my voice steady. For years, you've treated me like infrastructure, like a utility you could tap into whenever you needed, not like family. My sister chimed in, accusing me of punishing them. I looked her right in the eye and said, I'm not punishing you. I'm ending my own punishment. They had 24 hours to decide. They could sign the papers, shaky and silent, or they could risk sinking alone. They signed. The aftermath wasn't some explosive, dramatic resolution you see in movies. It was slow, and it was transformative. Therapy was brutal. It unearthed years of buried resentments. We finally talked about things we had never spoken of. My dad's defensiveness slowly cracked. My mom cried, finally admitting she had leaned on me too much. My sister's denial was the hardest to break through, but eventually, she started to see. And slowly, our conversations began to change. They stopped starting with a request and started starting with a genuine, "How are you?" For me, living in Seattle, the freedom was profound. It was like I could finally breathe. My life bloomed without the constant weight of their needs, without bracing for the next emergency call. I slept soundly through the night. I excelled in my career, unhindered by family drama, and I learned a powerful lesson. Real love, healthy love, thrives with limits. It doesn't thrive on endless sacrifice. In the end, stepping out of last place didn't mean abandoning my family. It meant claiming first place in my own story. It meant teaching them, and myself, that my worth wasn't tied to what I could provide for them. If you've ever felt ranked, or invisible, or like the designated problem solver in your family, know this: choosing yourself isn't betrayal. It's not selfish, it's survival. It's the first step to building a life that is truly your own. Thanks for listening. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about finding your voice.